Hi, I'm Alex Pokey.
And I'm Haywood Jablomi.
And I'm Thomas Hunt.
And this is the Bad News Network.
Yeehaw! Biden addressed Congress this week, and there is plenty for me to break down. During the speech, Biden touched on many points, focusing on climate change, Republican voters, and the first female vice president of the United States. Actually, Biden didn't touch the first female vice president. I apologize for that. He didn't actually touch anyone. The address looked different from years past, with the crowd being much smaller, and the people who were in attendance were socially distancing and wearing masks, and some of the Republicans were sleeping. He spoke on federal investments he's calling on Congress to pass, which he believes are necessary to compete with autocratic countries like China. He also boasted about the recently passed American Rescue Plan, a plan put together to help support American families and businesses who have been affected by COVID-19. Biden unveiled a vast plan early this year called the $2 trillion Infrastructure Proposal, with the goal to invest in American infrastructure and even expanding the term infrastructure to include services outside of the traditionally described infrastructure, or something like that. Generally, money would be invested into things like building roads, bridges, high-speed broadband infrastructure, but this would also include things like child care and certain Medicaid coverage. The reason being, if the government allocates money for those services, it will allow more people to join the workforce and continue to grow the economy. So with the traditionally laid out plan, even if transportation issues were not taken care of, people may not be able to take advantage of that, and they would still need to stay home and take care of their children or parents. The idea sounds great, and it's something that has been pushed by progressives for quite a while. But it still falls onto the American people to step up. When you look at things current government assistance programs, there are plenty of people that take advantage of it. Even with the pandemic, I personally knew people who were okay not going back to work because their unemployment checks were more than their actual paychecks. If this system is put in place, there will have to be a strong system of checks and balances to make sure infrastructure progress is actually made. Another idea pitched by the president is a plan to sharply increase taxes on the wealthy Americans and corporations to cover an additional $4 trillion in federal spending that he is proposing. He said that it was time for these individual companies to pay their fair share at a time when the pandemic has highlighted inequality. Small businesses and families have been absolutely destroyed during the pandemic, where companies like Amazon and Walmart have thrived. Pay gaps between CEOs and their workers is now the largest in history. Republicans and some of the richer Democrats have criticized aspects of this plan, calling for a smaller corporate tax increase. I'm guessing those people have a lot of money. Hey, I'm poor, so I don't really care. The most likely tax increase on the list is something Republicans actually came up with, which is a rule barring owners of privately held companies from using more than $500,000 in business losses to offset other types of income like spouse's salary. Biden spent a short amount of time talking about the border crisis and the need to focus on immigration reform. But I'm guessing he didn't want to spend too long on this subject since people are ready to drag him over the coals on this issue. Biden spoke out about how the Trump administration and their team was handling the issue, but he hasn't done much to change anything from the previous administration. Biden has been trying to rebrand the detention facilities to have a more sparkly look on the outside, like a McDonald's place. Sadly, the inside is still McDonald's. A couple of months ago, amid growing pressure to show what the condition of these facilities looked like, the Biden administration allowed a group from the media to go into one of the facilities, and from the images taken, the situation looked as bad as it had ever been, with several holding areas being overcrowded and people sleeping on the floor. Biden urged Congress to pass the immigration proposal, which would create a pathway to citizenship for over 11 million people who have entered this country illegally. But it does not address the need for heightened security at the border that the Republicans have asked for, and it also doesn't address the issue of the growing amount of children and teenagers crossing the border illegally. More than anything else, the president called for unity and the understanding that all Americans are created equal, and that's something we can't leave behind. The opportunities in our country should be extended to every American citizen. There's too much division in the country as the pandemic has continued to polarize both sides. So no matter what the administration does to try and show us a path, it truly comes back to the citizens of America to move our country forward. John F. Kennedy said it best, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." Hey, it's simple. It all comes down to one simple thing. Stop being a because I guarantee you, all those people that you think are also think you're an Let's just try and be good to each other.
A private school in Florida has made the decision to not employ teachers who are vaccinated against the coronavirus. You heard that right. Teachers who are vaccinated will not be able to work at this school. And any teacher or staff member who has already taken the vaccine, we're told to stay separated from students. So you don't want the healthy people working in your school? That's a little weird. Oh, now it makes sense. The founder of the Setner Academy in Miami, Leila and David Setner, are known anti-vaxxers. Where most schools promote hygiene and clean environment, at the Setner Academy, children spend the day spitting in each other's faces after reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. In a letter sent out to the school staff on Wednesday, Leila Setner asked staff members who haven't taken the vaccine yet to hold off until the end of the year, or just not take it at all. One of the main reasons she cited for making this decision was that women who were not vaccinated were having miscarriages just from being in the proximity of someone who is vaccinated. Not only is this biologically impossible, it is also the stupidest thing I have ever heard. Dr. Andrea Cox from the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine said that women who have gotten the vaccine while pregnant haven't seen any complications, and that false information like this is very damaging to the community, especially when that information is coming from someone who owns a private school and is controlling what is taught to children. Do you want proud boys? Because this is how you get proud boys. A new shtick for Layla, though. Her school opened in September, which was earlier than most without the tyrannical measures that the government was putting in place. Like wearing a mask. Oh, the tyranny! It's funny to me because these are the same people who would go into a violent rage if a school made teachers get vaccinated. Right now, there's no word on whether or not kids will be kicked out of the school if they are vaccinated. Which doesn't surprise me because even though the center wants to push their beliefs, they still want to get paid. Dollar bills, y'all.
A grand jury has indicted 3 men with federal hate crime and attempted kidnapping charges in the death of Ahmaud Arbery, who was shot and killed last year. Gregory McMichael, his son Travis, and their friend William Bryan were all charged with 1 count of interference with rights and 1 count of attempted kidnapping, with Gregory and his son also facing charges of using guns to inflict violence. In February 2020, Ahmaud was jogging through a neighborhood near Brunswick in Glenn County, Georgia. A couple weeks previous, there had been reports of break-ins and trespassing in the same area, with many people saying that they had guns stolen out of their unlocked vehicles. Travis, one of the men involved with the killing, actually reported a pistol from his unlocked truck being stolen a month before the incident took place. Pro tip, lock up your cars. I lock my car up whenever I leave it, and no one's breaking in to steal my old Chick-fil-A wrappers and stale waffle fries. On February 23rd, after hearing reports of an unknown black man looking into a house that was under construction, the 3 men jumped into their pickup truck to track down this person. There were reports that said there had been an identified person who had been looking into the house on a couple of occasions, but there is no evidence that a crime was committed on any of these occasions. Is it weird to go up to a house that's under construction and look around for a little bit? Yeah, it's weird. Is it illegal, however? No. When these 3 men caught up with Ahmaud, they cut him off with their truck and a scuffle ensued. During that scuffle, Ahmaud was shot and killed. Most of this was actually caught on tape by William, one of the men being charged. Attorneys representing the McMichaels stated that they were upset that the Justice Department brought this fake narrative perpetrated by the media. My man, they videotaped themselves. 3 white dudes in a pickup truck armed with guns is never a good look. Did they just come from trying to run over Forrest Gump? The attorneys were also upset that the judge ignored a law in Georgia that allows a regular-ass person to detain a person who is committing burglaries until the police arrived. That law seems a little problematic. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of upstanding citizens out there who with the proper training would be able to utilize this. But then you have people like these 3 geniuses. If they aren't racist, they're definitely stupid. And if they're not stupid, they're definitely racist. But it's probably both.
This year, for the second time since the pandemic began, the historical Desert Festival Burning Man is canceled. I can't tell you how disappointed I am. I was looking forward to taking some ecstasy, rolling around in the dirt, showering porta potties while dressed like the ultimate warrior for a week. Apparently, there's a CEO of Burning Man, which honestly I never knew existed. I thought a bunch of dirty hobos and college hippies just mutually agreed to be cool and share drugs in the desert. Doesn't sound like something you would need a CEO for, but it's probably a good idea to have some hierarchy. I thought it might be King of the Dirt People or Captain Hallucinogen. CEO just seems so corporate. The current King of the Dirt People, Marianne Goodell, said it was a difficult decision to cancel the event, but based on the information available, it was the best choice to make. Here's my quick tip for the United States and the rest of the world. If the leader of a group of people who go out and party in the desert, have sex, and don't really shower while on drugs is like, maybe it's too dangerous this year, we should all still be taking this seriously. The current focus of the group will now be to focus on building Black Rock City 2022, which is the location Burning Man takes place at and only exists for a week. After that, it's either packed up and shipped out or swallowed by one of those grubs from Tremors. I have no plan to attend Burning Man next year or ever, but I'm glad for the people who are. I imagine doing hard drugs alone in quarantine can be tough on someone mentally.
This week, Michael Collins, the NASA astronaut who was the command module pilot for the Apollo 11 mission to the moon, passed away at the age of 90 after battling cancer. Collins was a fighter pilot in the United States Air Force for 4 years and graduated flight school at the age of 22. The first time he applied to the space program, he flunked out. Collins said it was because of one of his answers during the Rorschach Inkblot psychiatric exam. When he got to one of the sheets, it was completely white with no ink. When asked what he saw, he said, "Well, of course, that's 11 polar bears fornicating in a snowbank." Even though this was possibly the greatest answer of all times, the examiner didn't think so and gave Collins the boot. Collins was selected as the third class of astronauts in 1963, with his first mission being Gemini 10. On July 16, 1969, he was launched into space with his crewmates Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong. 4 days later, they'd become the first men to land on the moon. While Aldrin and Armstrong collected samples on the lunar surface, it was up to Collins to keep all the subsystems running on the Columbia by himself, during which time he even lost contact with Mission Control when he was on the far side of the moon. This earned him the name, the loneliest man in space. Collins said that Apollo 11 was the proudest moment of his life, which is awesome because it was an amazing feat to be accomplished. Fair winds, sir.
Taking a nice countryside stroll can be a very relaxing time. Breathing some fresh air, hearing some birds chirp in the background, taking a look around, and holy sh**, is that a grenade? Nope, it's just a sex toy. This week, a Bavarian bomb squad was called in after a woman in southern Germany called police saying she found a grenade while jogging. When the bomb squad approached, the grenade, they could tell something smelled fishy about all this, prompting them to believe it was not an actual grenade, but a sex toy. The plastic grenade was found with 2 unused condoms and an empty bottle of lubricant. So I guess whoever brought this out to the woods decided to forego safety and went full send. It also means whichever bomb squad member touched it first should definitely have washed their hands. There was also a USB cord found near the other items, but police are unable to tell if it was part of the fetish or just left there by someone downloading their birdwatching footage onto a laptop. It can only be one of those two things. Apparently old bombs are not uncommon to find in Germany, many of those dating back to World War II. Even though this bomb wasn't real, German authorities said it was still a huge pain in the When the old bombs are found, they are either diffused or set off by a controlled explosion. If this fake grenade would have been a real one, the situation could have been much more
UFC 261 happened last weekend, and boy was it a doozy. I'm a big fan of violence personally, and man I'm a big fan of violence. The main card on pay-per-view had 5 fights that all ended in knockout or TKO within round 2. There was even a never-before-seen win. Uriah Hall was able to beat Chris Weidman without throwing a single strike. How did he do that? When I first read it, I thought maybe he started at one of those McDojos where they teach some crazy no-touch spirit knockout. Or maybe Weidman was so intimidated by Hall's physique that he just tapped out on the mat. Honestly, both of those would be better than what actually happened. 17 seconds in, Chris Weidman threw a leg kick on Hall's leg that was firmly planted in the mat. When Weidman's leg hit Hall's, it wrapped around his leg like a piece of wet spaghetti. The adrenaline must have been pumping because Weidman stepped back like nothing happened, and the second he did, his leg folded in half like a lawn chair. I would tell you to go watch it, but honestly it scarred me for life, so if you do, proceed with caution. So to add irony to the injury, like 5 years ago, Chris Weidman was fighting Anderson Silva and the exact same injury happened to Silva. In the co-main event, Rose Namajunas, the world's most wholesome and most violent woman, knocked out women's strawweight champion with a head kick followed up by some sweet hammer fist to get herself the championship. After winning the title, Rogan asked her why she kept repeating "I'm the best" when Bruce Buffer was announcing her stats, to which she replied, "Because I am the best." In the main event, Jorge Masvidal got every drop of sweat knocked off of him as he was dusted by Kamaru Usman. Jorge recently had one of the fastest knockouts in UFC history with his jumping knee knockout of Ben Askren. Since we're talking about Ben Askren, everyone's least favorite YouTuber Jake Paul was in attendance, which prompted everyone in the arena to chant, "F you, Jake Paul." I also joined in at home screaming as loud as I could, hoping that somehow that little twat would hear me. The tone immediately changed when the camera switched to one of my favorite fighters and herbal enthusiast, Nick Diaz. Also, apparently Logan Paul is now signed to fight Floyd Mayweather. Boxing, what the actual f*** is going on? You're drunk, just go home.
India is in the midst of a second wave of COVID that is currently devastating the country. On Wednesday, the death toll topped at over 200,000 for this wave, with little to no signs of slowing down. Since the beginning of the pandemic, India has reported over 17 million cases, but experts are saying it could be 30 times higher, which would put them around 500 million cases. Scientists in India have said that COVID infections and deaths have been significantly underreported because of human error, poor infrastructure, and low testing levels. The amount of testing increased after the first wave of the coronavirus, but it's hard to tell how bad the second wave is because the number could be much worse than they already are. And they are terrible. One of the biggest struggles with this current wave is the lack of supplies to treat this huge influx of patients. A normal tank of oxygen costs about $80, but it's being sold on the black market for almost $1,200. How about just fucking help people? Several countries have pledged oxygen and other medical supplies, but India is also lacking personnel and space to treat the infected patients. Even with more beds, the healthcare facilities are all finding themselves extremely understaffed. Hospitals and medical care facilities are at capacity, so many patients are being set up in cars, while there are people dying on the sidewalks right next to them. It is projected that the daily death toll could peak at 13,000 a day in the coming days, which is currently 4 times higher than it is now. Over 80% of India's religious community is Hindu. In that practice, it is believed a body must be cremated after someone dies. As bodies continue to pile up, the crematoriums in Delhi are so behind that they are being forced to makeshift funeral pyres on spare patches of land. Normally, the ceremony is done on cremation ghats, which is meant for the types of ceremonies, but with constant rising death tolls, any spare area of land is being used. There is a fear that if daily death toll continues to rise, they will need to start burning bodies in the streets. I cannot imagine what this would look like, or what it might be like living there right now. My heart goes out to the people of India, and I hope things get better before they get worse.
On Wednesday, federal agents executed a search warrant on Trump's old friend Rudy Giuliani. Giuliani was Trump's former personal lawyer, among other things, but he is in the grips of an advancing criminal investigation that has been underway for almost 2 years. The current investigation is focused on Giuliani's activities in the Ukraine, including whether he conducted illegal lobbying for Ukraine officials while he also pursued an investigation linked to President Biden. The agents who conducted the search warrant were looking for Giuliani's electronic devices, taking his phone and his Nintendo Wii. He asked them to give him a couple more minutes on Wii because he was about to beat his high score in Wii bowling. It's all in the wrist. As part of the same investigation, the home of Victoria Tonson was also searched. She is another lawyer who is also a friend of Giuliani's, who along with her husband signed an agreement with a Ukraine prosecutor in an effort to collect information about Biden and his possible ties to the Ukraine. Apparently everyone does f***ed up in the Ukraine. It's the Ukraine! It's like that spot under the bleachers where kids would get caught smoking weed by teachers, and then the teachers would just smoke the weed under there themselves. everyone just keeps pointing the finger even though everyone's probably doing sketchy. Whether you're pounding McDonald's and Diet Coke or smelling little kids, I don't trust you. As per usual with all politicians, the first course of action is to deny, deny, deny. If caught lying, continue lying, and then make counter accusations. Rudy is executing this perfectly as he has twice offered to demonstrate that this is completely untrue, but both times prosecutors said no thank you. That's a very weird interaction. Hey, I'm innocent, and I can prove it. Nah, no thanks. Okay. While Guliani's apartment was being searched, his son Andrew stepped out to speak to the press and said that this could happen to any American and asked if they had seen his Xbox.
This week, a U.S. Navy warship fired warning shots on 3 small Iranian speedboats that came within 70 yards of the ship. This is the second event this month where an Iranian ship came at U.S. ships. Both times, U.S. soldiers were quoted saying, "Do it, you f***." On Monday night, 3 ships from the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, a name that must have been argued over for a while, approached the USS Firebolt, USS Coast Guard cutter Baranov, which was out there being taught by the Firebolt how to swim. The U.S. crews issued multiple warnings telling the Iranian ship to chill out and not to make us come over there, which the Iranian crew decided to ignore. The crew of the USS Firebolt shot 3 warning shots. At this point, we don't know if the warning shots or if the Navy is just proving that they have the worst aim of all the branches, but that warning shot was heeded by the Iranian ships as they immediately moved to a safe distance away from the US ships. With tensions between United States and Iran constantly on the rise, the 3 Iranian ships increased the risk of conflict by not following the maritime rules of the road. Does that make sense in this case? Rules of the waterway? Order of the ocean? Statute of the sea? All better than road for sure. A similar event happened April 2nd. Iranian ship the Har 55 repeatedly crossed in front of the Coast Guard cutters Wrangel and Monomoy. We think the Iranian ship came over to argue which of the 3 ships had the least intimidating name, but before the answer could be found out, the US ships sounded 5 blasts from their horn as a warning to the Iranian ships. It took the Iranian ships 3 hours to bounce, but they eventually did. The Navy, the older brother of the Coast Guard, took offense that the Iranian ships bum-rushed the cutters and told the Iranian government, "I wish a motherfucker would."
And finally in Florida Man news, Keith Adams was arrested for trying to smuggle drugs into prison. Pretty standard practice for Florida, I know, but the medium of delivery was a little less traditional. Usually you throw a file into a birthday cake, or some girl will put the keys to your cuffs in her bosom after flirting with one of the guards. Foolproof. But Keith had a different idea. He filled his prosthetic legs with fentanyl and Xanax and limped right on into that prison like nothing was gonna happen. Keith was arrested on possible cocaine possession charges, and while he was being detained by police, they asked if he was concealing anything in his prosthetic leg, to which he replied no. Hey dumb, if they ask, they already know. When they ask if you're hiding anything in your ass, they don't wait for you to answer before dipping their fingers in lube and going 3 knuckles deep. Keith, who looks like he was born addicted to meth, was charged with hiding drugs from police along with a couple other charges. Honestly, Keith was a little upset with the charges, and he felt a little defeated. Even though it wasn't his first time going to jail, he felt like this time it was going to cost him an arm and a leg. This prison sentence isn't too long, but Keith did say it was a little lame. Whoa, Pokey. I know, that's a lot of handicap jokes. It's okay. Look at these popsicle sticks. The first thing Tim Kennedy said when he met me was, "Wow, your legs are really tiny." Not hello or "Wow, your cauliflower is super intimidating," so I don't really care, I can say that. And with that, I'm Day Drinking.
And I'm Thomas Hunt.
And I'm not Nick Palmisano.
And this is the Bad News Network. Our news is at least as bad as the news you're getting already, and if the world ended tomorrow, just remember one thing. Pokey goes for it. Monday says Pokey goes for it. As always, use code BNN at rangerup.com to get 25% off your purchase. And if you're on OnlyFans and have scrolled way too long, check out Nick and Matt on OnlyFans, at Nick and Matt. Have a great weekend, folks.